You're listening to the Being Stellar podcast, the podcast for modern leaders and entrepreneurs who are tired of hustle culture and ready to invite more ease and more prosperity into their lives. I'm your host, Deborah Stellingwerff, master teacher and coach, and I am obsessed with helping you avoid burnout while you create a sustainable lifestyle full of possibility and profit on your terms. On the show, you'll hear inspiring stories of possibility, and you'll get empowering strategies and insights from me to support you in creating your stellar life. Well, hello there, stellar friends, and welcome back to the Being Stellar show. I am so glad you're here because I'm going to say probably one of the most important messages that I've ever shared since I started this podcast. And it's on a topic that comes up all the time in my coaching. It comes up in my life. It comes up in your life. I'm sure of it. And you will probably have seen, if you've been on the internet, seen advertising from programs and coaching programs. They often promise you this result. And I have a weird relationship with it because I do believe the idea of it is overrated. And at the same time, I think that's because it's misunderstood. And that is this idea of clarity, having clarity and what that means to have clarity. Now, here's the thing. People will promise to give you clarity if you sign up for their program or do your coaching and do coaching with them. And certainly my clients get clarity from working with me, but it's not because I give it to them. They find it within themselves. I happen to ask the right kinds of questions that help them find the clarity, but ultimately, you're the only one who can give yourself clarity. Now, most of us need help from a coach or a therapist or even a good friend to get that clarity, because professionals like myself and my therapist and my coaches, we have in our toolkit the right questions to ask to help people get that clarity they're seeking. But ultimately, they've got to find it themselves, and so do you. Now, where this gets sticky is that often when people come to me saying they want clarity, what they really want is certainty. They may have a decision to make, or they're wondering which action to take, and they say they're looking for clarity, and you may have done this, I'm sure I have too, but what they're looking for really is certainty. We all want certainty. We have lived through some pretty uncertain times the last several years. The pandemic, if it's taught us anything, is that certainty is an illusion, but we still seek it. Our brains are always trying to protect us. You've heard me say this before, that your brain's job isn't to make you happy, it's to keep you safe and alive. And one of the ways it does that is by grasping for certainty. And as we learned from the pandemic, we cannot know what the future holds. And we can be pretty accurate with some educated guesses about what the future might hold based on experiences of the past. But one of my mentors says, the past is a predictor of the future until it isn't. And so we can only ever make approximate guesses about the future. We can never guarantee what it's going to be. And yet we still look for that. Often I coach people when they come to me and they're like, I just want to know how to get from A to B. And I'm like, have you ever been from A to B before? Well, no, but I want to know how to get there before I take any steps. If going from A to B is going from where you are now to a successful, profitable, let's say multi-million-dollar business, and you're wanting to know all the steps in between before you take the first step, I'm sorry, that is not available to any of us. I wish I had the crystal ball that can give you that, and I don't, and neither does anybody else if they promise you that. What you can have clarity about is the direction you're heading. You can have clarity about what it feels like to move in the right direction. And you can have clarity about the next step. But absolute certainty is something that's not available to us. We can't have absolute certainty. the pandemic taught us that. We thought we knew what tomorrow was going to hold and the tomorrow after that, but the past several years of tomorrows have taught us that we can't actually know. And it's still happening in some ways. There's still a lot of economic uncertainty as a fallout of the pandemic, and there's a lot of relational uncertainty as relationships have been shifting and transforming because of the pandemic. There's a lot of people who are in uncertainty around their professions, their careers, their businesses. There's just a lot of uncertainty still that is in many ways the fallout of the pandemic. And it's also just normal. We might just be more aware of it because of the current time. So there's always going to be uncertainty. And when we are looking for clarity, a lot of the times what we're looking for really is that certainty, because we don't like the uncertainty. We're uncomfortable with the uncertainty. When we have uncertainty, there's a possibility that we might take the wrong steps, and I'm using air quotes here, that we might take those wrong steps and things aren't going to work out perfectly, or we might fail. And so we're looking for certainty so that doesn't happen. Now, here's what I've learned, because I've had the same issue, and I still do sometimes. And here's what I remind myself of, that it is safe to be in the not knowing. Uncertainty is not something to be feared. I know this because I'm wise, but also because I'm creative, I am resourceful, and whatever the future holds, when I arrive there, I'm going to be there, and I will take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And here's what I know for sure about you. You too are wise and creative and resourceful. And whatever your future holds, when you get there, you will be there and you will deal with that because you know how to solve problems. You know how to take action and you know how to take care of things. You know, a few years ago, I had a coaching session with a wonderful coach in my community that led to an extraordinary insight that has transformed the way I see the state of not knowing, has transformed my relationship with uncertainty. And this is why I can be here now and say to you, it really is safe to be in the not knowing. And even as I say it, I'll remind you what I remind myself of constantly, that there's a part of my brain, that survival part of the brain, that wants to know because it feels safer knowing. And the thing is, we can never really know until we get there. So what I've learned in this coaching experience was that if we transform the way we see the not knowing, the way we see uncertainty, the way we relate to uncertainty, it will change everything. So most of us are struggling against the not knowing. We're struggling against the uncertainty. We want to know. We want to know where we're going, what's happening. We want to know how to get from one place to the other with absolute certainty. And if you think of uncertainty as a place, of not knowing being a place, and I use not knowing and uncertainty in synonymously because that's what uncertainty is about, is like it is not knowing. But if we think of uncertainty and not knowing as a place, in our anxiety, we are bouncing off the walls. We're like banging against the walls and we're looking for an exit and we're looking for a door and we can't find the exit and we're freaking out because we can't find the exit. And we're looking all around the walls all around us and it's dark and we just can't find the exit. So I want you to imagine if the not knowing is a place or a room and we're bouncing off the walls trying to get out of it. Instead, let's imagine settling down in this room, like calming down, sitting down in the middle of this room of the not knowing, and practice trusting that is a safe place to be. If we could do that, if we could sit down in the middle of this uncertainty and train our brains to know that the not knowing is a safe place because you are naturally resourceful, we could then draw from our creativity and our resourcefulness and learn to trust ourselves that everything's going to be okay. And no matter what the future holds, everything will be okay because we are resourceful. And when we come from that calm place of being centered and grounded, we can be not certain, but we can begin to have some clarity about the next steps that we can take. Because when we're in fear about uncertainty, guaranteed you have very little access to your creativity and your resourcefulness when you're in fear. But when you calm the F down and get grounded in this place, you will be able to access your creativity and your resourcefulness. Now, maybe the future will hold some things that you don't like, and that's okay, because you'll then be able to use your creativity and resourcefulness to change that. We don't need to fear it. I want to share with you, and I've hinted at it with this metaphor of the uncertainty and the not knowing being a place. But I want to share something with you that I've not shared publicly before, but I've decided it's time to share it because there's been a lot of talk about uncertainty. And if I can help you shift your relationship to the not knowing and shift your relationship to uncertainty, I want to do that. And that's why I want to share this. So I had this coaching call, as I mentioned, and I was at the point of leveling up my business, which seems to be like I'm always at the point of leveling up my business. That is just the nature of entrepreneurship. We're always on the verge of leveling up. I love that. That's why I'm an entrepreneur, and that's why I enjoy it so much. And it seems like we are always on that level. And so one of the things that to be happy and successful as an entrepreneur, you really have to change your relationship with uncertainty and be okay with it. It's not to say you won't have feelings of fear sometimes, but you'll know how to get yourself grounded again. Okay, so back to the story. So I'm at the point of leveling up in my business and had that usual fear of the unknown lurking around the edges, right around the edges of my consciousness, but sometimes even right around the edges of my sternum, right? There was this pressure on my sternum, this fear. And, I was asking myself questions like, what if I'm visible? And what if I become more visible? And what's going to happen if I do that? And actually, I think it was maybe before I started this podcast. So it was a little while ago. I probably should have shared this earlier. Sorry about that. And I was afraid of next leveling. I was afraid of putting myself out there, putting my voice out here for you to criticize, putting my ideas out here for you to criticize or dismiss or condemn. And I had some fear around that because people can be really mean on the internet when they are anonymous. And so, of course, it takes a great deal of courage to step out there and go, okay, you can have your opinion and it's none of my business what you think. I'm going to delete you if you make a negative comment because I don't want to see that and I don't want to participate and receive that from you, but you're welcome to your opinion. I'm not going to debate with you who I am. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm over it. I'm over whatever your opinion is. If you don't want to listen, that's fine. There's other people for you. But I'm here to speak to the people who can be served what I have to share. And because I know I benefited from it, and I know my clients have benefited from what I share, and I want to make sure that I reach more of you and let you have that experience too if you want it. And if you don't want it, that's okay. You don't have to listen. Now there's going to be somebody else for you, and I'm okay with that. Okay, so back to my story. I was in this place of fear about being seen and heard, and about what was going to happen. And that comes up at different levels all the time when you're in your business. And I want you to remember that I'm a recovering perfectionist, and so sometimes it pops up and paralyzes me. Less so now, but it used to a lot. And whenever I'm trying to do something big and different, like right now, actually, I'm working on a book. Well, not this minute, but at this time in my life, I'm writing a book. And I've had different levels of that resistance. First of all, when starting it, but now even that I'm in it, sometimes I have that resistance of not wanting to finish it because what are people going to think? And I can get into that criticism. And part of getting past that fear and making it more certain and more clear for myself is to let people know that I'm doing it. Taking the advice of my book coach, Kimberly Day, who will be on the show very soon, actually, who told me to make sure you tell people what you're going to do so that it keeps you in the game. Okay, back to the story. A few different tangents there. Thank you for bearing with me. So I was having this coaching session with an extraordinary coach in my community. His name's Bob, and he took me through a visualization that took me to a place that I was so surprised by it. It still seems so real. I feel like I actually visited this place. And what I discovered was that I went into this place called the not knowing, and I was sitting on the edge of it, very afraid of going into the not knowing. It was like a black hole. And I really felt like if I step into this, I'm going to get swallowed up and disappear. And we all know that's what being in the not knowing actually feels like. It feels like we are going to disappear. We're going to be annihilated. And this is why we look for certainty. But we can't have it. So we need to look into what is actually going on in that not knowing. And I had the most amazing experience that I want to share with you now. I allowed myself, and maybe come with me on this journey if you dare. We're sitting on the edge of the not knowing. It seems like a black hole. Your legs are dangling in because you're almost ready to go in. And I want you to visualize yourself, and I visualize myself stepping into this place that was the not knowing. And it was scary. And I expected it to be a place that was frightening and anxiety inducing. And what it was really, really interesting is that when I allowed myself to slip into it, right, like slipping in to the edge of a pool. We're sitting on the edge of a pool. If you're with me and you're following the visualization, you're imagining yourself sitting on the edge of the pool, and let yourself slip in to the darkness of the not knowing. Trust me, it's safe. You're safe. And when I went in there, here's what I discovered. This place of not knowing, man, it was dark. It was pure darkness. So that's why I was afraid of it, because I was thinking, I can't imagine what's next. I can't see what's next. I can't visualize what's next. So it must not be safe. But I was willing to go here, and I slipped into the not knowing. And as soon as I did, the fear was washed away, because I realized that while this place was dark, it wasn't cold. It wasn't empty of life. It was actually teeming with life and possibility. And in that moment, I realized the not knowing is a place where all creation comes from. Our creative impulse comes from that place of not knowing. Creation comes from there. And I actually had an image of this pool, this dark pool, kind of transforming into a uterus. And that this place was like a uterus. It was warm, it was vital, it was pulsing with life and possibility. And I realized in that moment that the not knowing, the place of uncertainty, is the place where all creation comes from. When we're certain about things, we are certain about how things are, how they can be, how they must be. There's no possibility when we're in the knowing, when we know things, we're absolutely certain this is the way things are. It closes the door on possibility. We can't open up another reality when we're in certainty. When we're in the not knowing, we are forced to learn to trust in the not knowing. Because when we're relying solely on our current reality for certainty and peace of mind, we will never be peaceful because we're always looking beyond the current moment. And no matter what the future holds, as I said, everything that you're longing for begins in that place of not knowing. And no matter what the future holds, you're going to be there. You're resourceful and creative and whole, and you will take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And this was the knowledge that came to me as I was having this visualization and I was having this experience. And not knowing, when we come to this place, what I've discovered is actually kind of a fun place to hang out. In fact, I go there on purpose now every morning when I do my meditation. I intentionally go to that place that I used to be so afraid of. because it was dark and I couldn't see what was next. I couldn't see beyond the darkness, and so I was terrified to look there. But now I can go there on purpose because I know it's safe, and I know it's safe for you as well. Now I know this is a little bit more esoteric and a little bit more, I hate the word woo, but I don't know what else to call it, than many of my episodes. But I thought it was important to share this with you, that you too are safe in the not knowing. If you're about to do something big, maybe it's changing careers, maybe it's starting a business, maybe it's leaving a relationship, it can feel really frightening because you can't see beyond this current reality. And for whatever reason, the psychology of it is that we'd rather have the pain we know than what we don't know. So we tell ourselves that this familiar is okay. And we get stuck in what I call the trap of the familiarity zone. And I call it that because it's certainly not comfortable. And yet we'll stay there because we know it. And what we know seems much more safe than what we don't know. It's messed up, but we do it. That's how our brains work. And we can thank that part of ourselves because it's doing the best it can. It has limited knowledge. You know more than it does. And so we've got to have you find ways to reconcile your relationship with the not knowing, so you can let that part of your brain that's a little bit anxious for your safety know that it's actually safe to be there. We have to be actively conscious about moving ourselves beyond and reminding ourselves that we're safe in the not knowing. So I want to leave you with that. You are safe in the not knowing. Clarity is great. You can have clarity. Let's figure out what your next step is. But when you're looking for certainty, you're distracting yourself from creating what's possible for you because you're not actually taking any action. One of the metaphors that I use in my business is the idea of a stellar life. The Being Stellar podcast is about expanding into your fullest potential, because I believe when you expand into the fullness of your being, you'll be happier and you will inspire others to do the same. And together we'll make the world a better place. When you expand in your courage and yes, your clarity and your creativity, and you have your impact and you grow your wealth and all of the things that make you fully you, you'll inspire others. And I think that's such an amazing thing. And so this image that I want to leave you with is the reminder that the stars shine in the darkness. For you to fully shine your light in the world, you need to be willing to go into the darkness of the not knowing, because that's where you're going to shine most brightly. And that's when you can do your work in the world, be who you're meant to be, is when you allow yourself to shine in that darkness. And one of the best ways that I've found to overcome fear of uncertainty and anxiety about the not knowing is to connect with my future self. Because I know that future Deb has not only all the wisdom, knowledge, experience, and resourcefulness that I have, she also has all the wisdom, knowledge, experience, and resourcefulness that she's gained along the way getting to where she is. And so connecting with future Deb really helps me to feel calm when I'm in the not knowing. And one of my favorite ways to do that is through the Future You meditation. And so I've recorded for you my Future You guided meditation so you too can connect with future you. Wow, that's a lot of yous. This is all about you. And so you can access that for free. It's my gift to you by clicking on the link in the show notes to this podcast episode. So until next time, keep being stellar, because it's your time to shine and you really are ready for the next step.